Pop Star Never Stop Never Stopping is the incredibly underrated 2016 mockumentary created by Andy Samberg, Akiva Schaffer, and Jorma Taccone, collectively known as The Lonely Island. Truly anti-capitalist in nature, the film features a litany of recognizable cameos and bougie locations, and ended up losing Universal Studios $11 million in the process. Truly just well done, gentlemen. But that's not what this video is about. Taking on the role of Kid Connor, aka Connor for Real, the SNL alum creates an absurd mashup of Justin Bieber's vapid celebrity and Beastie Boys' goofy rapport, with elements of NSYNC.
Hello, my name is Tyrus Quash, and I do the food service on Connor's tours.
Eminem, and Macklemore sprinkled in along the way. Equal Rights is an insightfully stupid parody of the 2012 gay ally anthem, Same Love, and highlights the hypocrisy of cishet men who, in an attempt to appear supportive, end up confirming their heteronormative biases and end up speaking over folks in the LGBTQIA+ community who have been doing the work for decades. Although I do believe the Lonely Island are fairly smart people, Samberg was brave enough to rewrite and then promptly cancel his popular cop comedy Brooklyn Nine-Nine in the midst of the 2020 protests. I am not suggesting that this song is filled with salient political insights. The genius of this track is in its portrayal of ignorant, performative allyship. And it's a masterpiece. Let's get into it.
I'm not gay, but if I was, I would want equal rights.
Right off the bat, it becomes clear that Andy's first response to Macklemore's Same Love was, wow, dude. Really? It is the closest thing to a diss track The Lonely Island has ever made. If you recall, the homegrown Seattle MC spends much of his LGBTQ anthem asserting his own straightness, all while telling marginalized groups that their fights are the same. On Equal Rights, Samberg immediately calls out this phony posturing, interspersing Connor's newfound wokeness with proud declarations of masculinity.
It's not fair, I'm not gay, that the government has to say.
As basic human rights continue to be stripped away in America, it's important to remember that the Defense of Marriage Act, proposed by former Libertarian presidential candidate Bob Barr and current Republican lobbyist Don Nichols, received only 1/3 opposition from the Democratic caucus. Calling it divisive and unnecessary, Bill Clinton would sign it into law anyway in September of 1996. The thing about this heinously regressive law is that same-sex couples didn't really start trying to get marriage licenses until around the 1970s. And on these occasions, homophobic people in local governments just denied any requests that designated the same gender for both participants, just because they felt like it. There was nothing officially stating that same-sex marriage was illegal until this law was passed in 1996. This is an important thing to note about the United States government. It doesn't do anything. The Constitution is vague and flimsy on purpose. For decades now, people with their own agendas have gotten into local positions of power so they can make horrible decisions based on their stupid beliefs. That is the freedom our government offers us.
It gets me so angry. On behalf of them, I feel passionate, not gay.
Here, Connor makes sure to express his distaste for these oppressive systems, while also distancing himself from the marginalized at the same time. As we've stated in many other videos, the general acceptance of diversity in American society is step 0. We might say that getting angry about the treatment of minority groups is step 1. Step 2 is actually investigating not only the history of said oppression, but your own role in its development.
So I pray for them and I say for them, we need to make a change, not gay.
Or you could just not do that. From Don't Ask, Don't Tell, to Pray the Gay Away, to Don't Say Gay, it's rather apparent that we are very far from the actual acceptance of LGBTQIA+ people in the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant hellscape we all find ourselves in. This is mainly because in the late 1800s, the Greek word arsenokoitai, which, at the time the Bible was written, was common language for the controversial practice in which a small group of wealthy old men took young boys from their families in exchange for money, was replaced with the term homosexual. GayChristian101.com compares this mistranslation to the English word mandate, which, if also translated literally, would also mean an intimate encounter between two men. Wait, is that why people don't want to get vaccinated? Going back to the original Greek texts, we find that the word malakoi refers to a number of activities, from personal grooming habits to general promiscuity. and pornoi is used to describe male prostitutes, who are often mocked by the establishment for their feminine appearance. Both of these terms were common misinterpretations of pagan goddess worship, which did include elaborate sex rituals and gender bending. These were also the folks that Jesus was said to spend most of his time with. Don't get me wrong, there totally is homophobia and transphobia written into the Bible. It is being perpetrated by the people Jesus is fighting against. By the 2nd century, the story of this North African trans-communalist who was killed by the police for protesting the rich began growing in popularity. So, power-hungry Roman patriarchs who were already very good at oppressing people went around and murdered the original Gnostic Christians, stole their religion, and forced their own materialistic, hyper-masculine version of it onto the world. The ancient Greeks didn't have words for different kinds of sex. What they did recognize was consent and the dangers of unjust hierarchy. That's right, folks. Before the year of our Lord 1894, absolutely nobody on the planet identified as straight or gay. Until this guy came along. Richard Fridolin Joseph Ferrer Kraft von Festerberg auf Fronberg genannt von Embing was the 19th century German psychiatrist and author of Psychopathia Sexualis, the late 19th century text that invented many terms for sexual behavior, including heterosexual, bisexual, asexual, and homosexual. In this book, he states, okay, I don't have a good German accent, and I don't want to read this out loud, so here it is. It's fucked up.
I see it clear as day. This area is not great titties.
Black and white thinking, also known as splitting, is a common defense mechanism where an individual cannot observe positive and negative traits simultaneously. It is common amongst children and emotionally immature adults, and is the enemy of dialectical materialism. Examples of this could be, mommy wouldn't let me have candy, so mommy is bad. Or, conversely, the Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party, so the Democratic Party is good.
But do what now? What now? I mean, listen.
Just seems not gay, wrong, not gay, that no one seems to care. Sports.
As we get to the end of the first verse, we start to get the impression that Connor has to remind himself that this is not a song about him actually being gay himself.
I was born this way.
Straight.
You were born your way.
Gay.
In a subtly clever casting decision, the chorus features legendary singer and activist, Pink. A champion for gay rights and many other causes, she has pushed the boundaries of pop artistry since the early 2000s. However, despite the short hair and tomboy aesthetic, she has never actually identified as part of the LGBTQ community, and has been married to motocross pioneer and regular-ass straight guy Carrie Hart for most of her adult life. Contrasted by Mary Lambert's touchingly sapphic lyrics on Same Love, Pink's appearance on Equal Rights is a direct shot at Hollywood's cursory understanding of representation.
Gay or straight or gay, it's all okay.
Sure.
Again, the bare minimum for any oppressed group is tolerance. Since the 1960s, society has politely instructed Americans to tolerate marginalized people, without bothering to educate the new generations as to how to actually build social equity and break down xenophobic barriers. That's because we live in a country that does not give a fuck about community growth or education.
Lying in bed next to 10 beautiful girls all straight.
In 1948, biologist Alfred Kinsey proposed that approximately 10% of the US population is gay. With this discovery came the Kinsey scale, which rates sexual activity from 0 to 6, with a 1 being, hilariously categorized as only incidentally homosexual. Listen, I had to go to the bathroom and the truck stop was right there. I didn't know there was going to be a glory hole. But, while I'm there. Kinsey reported that about 37% of men, but only 13% of women have had some type of pleasurable homosexual experience in their life. Modern Gallup polls suggest that Americans generally believe that 20 to 25% of the population is gay. The problem with these studies is they are all anecdotal and involve a scientist going around asking people to out themselves. Not only that, Kinsey's study was compiled from interviews from over 10,000 men and women who were predominantly white and college-educated. This 1977 study thought it would be useful to poll over 4,000 men in public shopping centers, office buildings, sports clubs, colleges, airports, and bus depots across the country. Excuse me, sir, if I might just have a moment of your time, I noticed that you just engaged in fellatio through a makeshift hole in the bathroom stall there. Just wondering, was that an activity that you were seeking out beforehand, or did you just happen upon it? For scientific purposes, of course. Further studies within the LGBTQIA+ community suggest that only about 1/3 consider themselves to be monosexual, or only attracted to one sex or gender presentation. So, in this scenario, we can safely assume that at least 2 of these young ladies are absolutely not straight. I'm guessing her. She does not seem to be into it. Another 2 to 3 of them have had some type of enjoyable gay experience. And the rest seem perfectly comfortable lounging around in their underwear with a bunch of other chicks, so I'm gonna assume they fall somewhere in the incidentally gay categories.
How is it that I can't have so much straight sex while 2 dudes are oppressed, not gay?
In 2015, Dr. Sapna Cherian surveyed the grip strength of Stanford University men, and regardless of result, told them that they were on par with the women's average. These young men were then given a seemingly unrelated questionnaire that included some personal questions and a list of rewards for participating. Across the board, men who were given lower scores lied about their height, reported higher than average numbers of sexual partners, and claimed what were considered to be overtly masculine products as their reward. Even amongst the ever-present threats of critical race theory and gender studies, men on college campuses still somehow manage to be influenced by misogyny. Can you believe it?
Having sex, not gay, or putting on a wedding dress, I assume.
Trans people have existed since the beginning of time and have been oppressed by the majority of patriarchal nation-states due to the masculine tendency to distinguish, determine, and delineate. Exploration, personal or otherwise, must provide a tangible benefit. Otherwise, it's a waste of valuable resources. In this regard, the feminine nature is the compassionate and communal investigation of limitless passion, just for the sake of it. That may or may not include dressing in traditional women's clothing or engaging in sexual encounters with the same sex. This occult truth is the key to understanding the repression of feminine-presenting individuals since time immemorial.
Politics are important, and if girls want to have sex with me because I said this, so be it.
So yeah, a lot of men are into women's rights simply because it's now unfashionable in many circles to be perceived as a misogynist. They are not interested in doing the work. They're still just trying to get laid. Throughout the Me Too movement, we saw many men of privilege put their hands in their pockets, stare at their shoes, and say, "Aw shucks," until the media got bored of them and moved on to the next abusive patriarch. All those demands for basic respect and accountability led to a resurgence in the men's rights movement. The main tenet of this ideology being that if women are equal, they are now subject to the same awful treatment cis men are accustomed to amongst each other. Fighting the patriarchy is not about fighting men. It is about deprogramming the way we treat each other.
I'm not a hero, I'm just speaking the truth. I'm not a hero, don't call me a hero.
Connor ends the second verse with a moving tribute to his own white saviorism, which of course overstays its welcome and takes over the bridge.
I'm not a hero,
I'm just a person,
so don't call me a hero.
not some kind of world leader.
Okay, so there's an almost fifth dimensional quality to The Lonely Island where it's like the song is being produced in one take while the music video is being filmed. I'm gonna call it a fifth wall break.
Next to a girl.
See that? That right there. That one look is fucking comedy gold.
True love trumps all predator.
A crowning achievement in homoerotic alpha bro schlock, Predator is the 1986 film starring greased-up himbos Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jesse Ventura, and Carl Weathers. Inspired by the CIA's Operation Condor, it features an iconic alien that hunts U.S. soldiers who were trying to infiltrate a revolutionary paramilitary camp in Central America. Yup, the Predator is a communist sympathizer.
What the hell are you?
Not gay, missionary, one love.
One Love was first written and performed by Bob Marley and the Wailers in 1965 and highlights the band's incredible influence on the reggae genre. Dominated by an upbeat, sing-along chorus, the verse paradoxically asks a very important question.
Is there a place for the hopeless sinner who has earned all mankind just to save his soul?
In the second verse, Marley further elucidates his deeply religious and socio-political aims.
Let's join together to fight this holy battle. When the man comes, there will be no doom.
Light a fluid.
In the early 1900s, industrialist Henry Ford began traveling around the country in his newly developed automobiles, and in the process, invented the concept of American recreational travel. These early vehicles were built using a considerable amount of wood, so Ford enlisted his cousin-in-law, real estate magnate Edward G. Kingsford, to establish a sawmill for his business. Smash cut to 1926, where University of Oregon chemist Orrin Stafford takes the waste generated by these mills and creates a portable form of fuel he calls charcoal briquettes. This technology is then stolen by Thomas Edison, who would develop the first charcoal production factory, of course adjacent to Ford's headquarters in the forests of northwest Michigan. By the 1930s, charcoal and portable grill kits were being sold at Ford dealerships as accessories to motor vehicles. The four-wheel drive truck has long been the choice of insecure cowards who are desperately trying to appear working class, and today are regularly used as weapons against free speech and the environment. This piece from Eddie Kim at Mel Magazine documents the many ways in which truck marketing campaigns have catered to toxic masculinity and now serve as literal advertisements for fascism under the guise of heroic service and rugged individuality. Sourced in the article is an absolutely stunning graphic novel by artist and writer Nate Powell, titled About Face. In it, he details how modern military aesthetics, quite literally created to erase a soldier's personality, and thus their accountability in battle, have evolved over the past century, penetrating the fear-driven civilian market through private security firms and fervent nationalism. He documents how corporate mercenary units that technically work outside of the Geneva Convention have long been utilized by U.S. overseas operations, and often engage in more aggressive behavior than their clean-shaven, uniformed counterparts. This attitude is then trickled down to the civilian community in the name of national pride, and what Powell describes as a mythical, centuries-old forever war. As the Defense of Marriage Act was being put into law, a candidate for Senate named Barack Obama responded positively to a survey about gay marriage from a local Illinois magazine. 2 years later, with the Anti-Gay Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act in full effect, Senator Obama took the same survey and responded undecided. In 2004, he seemed to be against the concept of gay marriage, but did support civil unions between same-sex partners. More importantly, he suggests that his views on the LGBTQ community have been negatively skewed by the church, and believes that the argument over gay marriage is just a Republican tactic to divide Christians within the Democratic Party. I mean, that's a good point. In 2008, as Senator Obama was running for president, he publicly opposed gay marriage, which according to top advisor David Axelrod, was an attempt to cater to conservative black Christians. He did say again that he was dedicated to giving gay people the full rights of married individuals, but in the next fucking breath, invokes states' rights. In the early 2010s, the Obama administration would flip again and officially support gay marriage as lawsuits over bankruptcy, military benefits, and other rights for same-sex couples started to flood the Supreme Court. I'm saying all this to say that Barack Obama didn't have anything to do with the legalization of gay marriage. Gay activists putting pressure on the Supreme Court did. Free love is a concept that, for centuries, has been a protest against marriage and patriarchal domination of all kinds, and has been the relationship model for many progressive movements. Practiced by indigenous communities around the globe for millennia, the idea was rediscovered during the European Enlightenment by revolutionary minds like Charles Fourier, William Godwin, and Giga Chads Edward Carpenter and Havelock Ellis. Despite their radical views, the brand of feminism these wealthy white men promoted rarely involved women's voices, and would be held back by the homophobia, transphobia, and racism of the time. From the utopian socialists, to the hippie movement, to the queer scenes of today, this pattern of appropriation without true representation continues to dominate the concept of free love. Harvey Milk was the U.S. naval officer, workers' rights champion, and legendary San Francisco Board of Supervisors member that is also recognized as the first openly gay man to hold public office in California.
I'm tired of listening to the Anita Bryans twist the language of the Bible to fit their own distorted outlook. But I'm even more tired of the religious leaders of this nation who know it and remain silent. I'm tired of their silence. And I'm tired of the John Briggs talking and lying about false role models. He's lying in his teeth and he knows it.
In 1978, Republican Senator John Briggs would attempt to ban gay people from teaching in public schools, which was, of course, actively opposed by Milk and his sympathizers. 3 days after the defeat of the bill, Former police officer and fellow board member Dan White resigned from his position, citing corrupt inner workings of local politics. On November 27, 1978, White took his standard police issue Smith & Wesson .36 revolver, snuck into a first-floor window of City Hall, and began a premeditated act of right-wing terrorism, unloading 5 hollow-point rounds into Mayor George Moscone and Harvey Milk, respectively. Unable to locate the 2 other Democratic politicians that were targeted, he was able to flee the scene before anyone found his victims.
Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
Jesus Christ!
The suspect is Supervisor Dan White.
When Dan White was convicted of a simple manslaughter charge and given just 7 years in prison for the execution-style murder of 2 politicians inside a government building, the San Francisco gay community erupted in protest, leading to the injury of over 60 police officers.
Dan White was let free because one of the people he murdered was a homosexual. If Dan White had not killed a homosexual, he would have gone to the gas chamber.
In response, the SFPD trucked in cops from across the state to the Castro district, who began indiscriminately attacking residents for over 2 hours. After serving 5 years of his 7-year sentence, White would move back to San Francisco against the wishes of many citizens, including Mayor Dianne Feinstein, who publicly announced that he was not welcome back. Less than 2 years after his release, the recently divorced White was found dead in his garage from apparent self-inflicted carbon monoxide poisoning. It is still debated whether he expressed any remorse for his actions.
A new standard of justice has been set with Dan White. Will all black persons in America, will all Spanish-speaking persons, will all poor whites from here on receive the same tender concern, the same leniency? I think not.
Drum solo courtside seat, safe sex.
The assassination of Harvey Milk coincided with the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, which is said to have infected 5% of gay men in San Francisco and New York by 1978. Joseph Sonnabend was the South African physician who worked with hundreds of AIDS patients, despite repeatedly being denied CDC funding. His seminal work, 1983's How to Have Sex in an Epidemic, introduced the concept of condom use for STD prevention. Upon his return home to observe the devastating effects of AIDS on South Africa, he immediately called for infrastructural support far beyond the delivery of medicine, recommending indefinite payments of $1 billion per year to those most affected by the disease. As Gordon Gekko told Americans that
greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Ronald Reagan's Commission on the HIV Epidemic called for immediate anti-discrimination legislation for patients and a $20 billion, 10-year investment in the fight, stating, "Once those with HIV are treated like anyone else with a disability, then we will find that what is best for the individual is also best for the public health." Reagan would end his second term in 1989, having never officially signed off on the report. As of 2021, the U.S. Agency for International Development reports that 36.3 million people have died from HIV and AIDS.
One, our push-ups, Lynyrd Skynyrd.
In 1974, Lynyrd Skynyrd released their most popular song, Sweet Home Alabama, which served as an anthem for a state that none of the band members were from, and also a response to Neil Young's anti-racist messages in his 1972 track, Alabama. Since then, the band, the fans, and the media have argued over the true meaning of the song. References to Young are obvious, but what is often debated is the third verse, which seems to show support for segregationist Governor George Wallace, and dismisses the Watergate scandal, in which Republican security aides were given campaign donations to break into DNC headquarters. On 1976's live album, One More From the Road, Skynyrd would perform Robert Johnson's classic blues cut, Crossroads, which is said by many to be cursed. Just over a month after its release, the band would be involved in a horrible plane crash that took the lives of their lead singer and 5 others. I mean, Cream broke up shortly after they performed this song, but didn't really have the same effect. Wonder why. Anyway, Lynyrd Skynyrd is also known for using the Confederate flag in live performances and on album covers. In 2012, guitarist Gary Rossington told CNN that they were distancing themselves from the well-known hate symbol after hearing from,
especially African-American people, and there's a lot of our fans are show up like that. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but we're still so proud to be Southern.
However, Rossington would soon take to Facebook to let his fans know that he would continue to represent Confederate pride and states' rights. And I mean, come on. With album titles like Gimme Back My Bullets, The Last Rebel, Endangered Species, Gods and Guns, Last of a Dying Breed, and Christmas Time Again, how could you possibly think these guys were okay with white supremacy? Okay, I think I'm having a heat stroke or something. What the fuck is this video about?
Sexual freedom for all, not gay.
Oh yeah. As Pink immediately regrets her appearance on the track, we get a deleted scene that confirms my fifth dimensional theory that they're somehow recording the song and the video simultaneously.
What the fuck, Connor? You don't have to shout every 5 seconds that you're not gay.
See, I told you. We have no concept of what a truly egalitarian society looks like. Capitalism divides us in all sorts of ways, but it is not the source of the inherent disconnection we have from each other.
I just think it's so sad that we live in a world where nobody told me that.
The reason racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia exist is because our collective femininity is being repressed. Femininity is not womanhood. Having an understanding of one's feminine qualities does not require you to be intimate with men or to act in a womanly manner, whatever that means.
He's not perfect, so I guess that's what we can blame him for.
What you can do is start offering unconditional empathy and patience to people who don't often get it. And get this, make sure they receive that empathy and patience. I can't stress this part enough. Before, I said before offering any of your own ideas. Can you try that? Good night and good luck.